Hey, everybody. This is the 15 through 11. So we're getting to just outside the top 10, the meat and potatoes, if you will, of the list. And if you haven't checked out our other ones on our playlist, it's all set up for you. And make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and to our Patreon. 15 through 11 scouting reports are up there as well. So go to patreon.com/Tiger Minor League Report and you'll find there. And also, I did do a free post today in regards to the Tigers coaching decisions in terms of the minor leagues. Gabe Alvarez, in case you did not know, is now in Toledo. He's new the manager. Andrew Graham gets promoted, goes back to from Lakeland to Erie, goes back to Erie for the first time since 2018, where he was there for a season. And the new Lakeland manager is from the Charleston River Dogs, or I'm sorry, the Frederick Tees, I believe.
Rene Rivera?
Yeah.
He was their bench coach last year, but I don't know where he was before that.
That's where I'm thinking he was. Yeah. He was in the collegiate program. He was the collegiate coach, or like that MLB draft league or whatever. So
gotcha.
And then another interesting name that came up, and this was you and I were talking about this earlier because we're trying to figure out I don't know how often this Toledo. I know Toledo had a couple of instructors, but I didn't know they had two pitching instructors. Virgil Vasquez, who was a Tiger farmhand, drafted I believe in 2003, will be the pitching coach along with Doug Brodeker. Is it Brodeker?
Bachler, I think.
Bachler, yeah, Bachler.
Yeah. So it looks like a couple of years ago they had a pitching coach and a pitching strategist and just one hitting coach, and now they have two hitting coaches and two pitching coaches at Toledo, which is just kind of goes. They're continuing to add coaching in the minor league level because they're continuing to help develop these players, and it kind of, as we talked about in some other videos, that for many years they didn't have anybody coaching pitching until Toledo. So kind of a stark difference from a few decades ago.
Yeah, there is like as we learned on Saturday, we talked about this in a video earlier, that the Tigers only had one pitching coach, one in the entire organization until you got to Toledo, because their philosophy was, well, if you didn't know how to pitch, tough shit, essentially. Yeah. So, and it could have been a combination of being cheap. I think it was like because Tom Monahan also ran things cheap. But anyway, let's get into the list. And so coming in at number 15 is Ty Madden. And Ty Madden last year, when he got called up, still has that problem against lefties. Lefties hit at a 326 clip, but righties, he was able to neutralize them pretty well to the tune of just 220 and slugging percentage of 267. But that slugging percentage on lefties was 522. And that's okay. I mean, you're probably asking yourself why you're saying it's okay. Here's the thing. This is Madden got his first taste in the major leagues last year at a time where we thought that it might have been maybe this year that would have been called up because he struggled so mightily against lefties. But then he just clicked the switch last year in Toledo, where it was usually a case where the first 4 innings, he looked really good, like unhittable. And then when the third time came around, he started getting rocked a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long and winding road for Ty Madden from when he was, a lot of people thought he was going to be a top 10 pick in the 2021 draft because he was kind of the classic, dominating, hard throwing college starter. And then he slid and slid and slid all the way to the Tigers. I think that the 32nd pick, something like that. And then, all the questions that came out were like, I don't know, the fastball is not going to play. It's not the sort of fastball that people like in the majors anymore. And so Tigers got busy working on that. They got busy working on his mechanics. And then, it was, like you said, it was kind of up and down. He pitched pretty well in Erie in 2023, with the exception of left-handed batters, right? They were crushing him. And so that was priority number one last year, was to find an effective weapon against left-handed batters. And they sent him back to Erie for the first, 4 or 5 starts of the season.
Yeah.
And he came and he dominated there, and they pushed him up to Toledo, and then he got rocked for about 4 months. But is this
his AAA debut?
His AAA debut, and we've looked at this one before because his command was just kind of off, particularly in the first 2 innings, and he got hit really hard. But one of the things we looked at, and we wrote an article about this a while back, and Jerry kind of first noticed that like over Madden's final 4 starts, he had really had a nice FIP. Like his ERA was still kind of high, but he had been striking out a ton of people, not walking anybody. And then we discovered, oh, he's changed his arm angle and moved on the rubber. And then he came up to the big leagues. And like you said, there were some issues in the big leagues. He didn't strike out a ton of people. He had one pretty good strikeout game. The fastball wasn't what it has been in the past. There have been times when he sits 96, 98. He was mostly like 93, 95 in the big leagues. But the main issue, and you can look at this like Baseball Savant, the main issue he had in the big leagues was his cutter, which was kind of one of the pitches he thought he could get lefties out with. His fastball worked out okay. His slider was good. His split finger was really good. Got a 44% whiff rate on his splitter, which was a new pitch for him last year. And so that's a really good sign because that's going to give him a legitimate weapon against lefties. For whatever reason, the cutter got demolished. Batters hit 529 against the cutter with an 882 slugging. So, 1 home run, 3 doubles on 16 batted balls. So that might be something he needs to either, figure out how to use that better or just shelve it. He's shown some promise with them. He's thrown some nasty ones, but for whatever reason, when they didn't work, they got smoked. So, it's we don't really know kind of what his future profile is going to be. He's got 6 pitches in addition to the cutter and the fastball and the splitter. He's in the slider. He's got a sinker and a slow curve that he throws, 4% of the time. And he's been super durable. It's he hasn't really missed a start in pro ball that I can think of. He's like 120 innings every year. So those are good things. At the same time, you almost wonder if you just put him in the bullpen and let him throw the fastball, slider, and splitter, maybe he's sitting 97 and touching 98, 99 with those 2 above average secondary pitches, and you've got yourself like a legit setup man. So that's just kind of where I'm at with it right now. Like he could be a back end starter, could be a setup man, and it's just a matter of kind of the next step for him.
And the thing about that splitter too, what's nice about that for his delivery is he does he throws a lot of the elevated fastball on the top of the zone, and that splitter is a really good way to get, in addition, as you mentioned earlier, with lefties. But that downward action on a splitter is such a nice contrast to the fastball, and so I hope that pitch continues to develop, because that's a pitch that I'm glad the splitter's bringing back, because I mean for a while I felt like the splitter went away. It was like everybody in the 90s had a splitter. Roger Clemens, a couple of the Brave starters had a splitter, and then it just went away for whatever reason. And I remember AJ Hinch talking about how effective that pitch can be. And so it's good to see, especially for a guy like Madden who has the ability you were just talking about, like when he's not getting hit hard like that, but just he can change eye level pretty well.
Yeah, he's got some feel for pitching. I think his command is a little loose inside the zone. That sometimes leads to those home runs and the hard hit balls. But like I said, there's starter traits there in just about every way. It's just, and particularly with the way the Tigers are right now, I don't know what his role is, given their starter depth. He might make an interesting trade piece for somebody else, but I think there's a starter chance in there. And if the Tigers want him on the team, it may be working out of the bullpen for a year or two, which wouldn't be the worst outcome.
Yeah, I mean, I could see a team out there that could quote unquote fall in love with him and what have you. So just because of his makeup and his durability has been, as you mentioned, pretty good. So number 14, coming in at number 14 is a guy who's been, it occurred to me, Chris, that he has been a really big riser.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about this year, at this point last year, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he was on our list at all.
He wasn't even on our radar, really. I mean, we knew who he was. We talked back in the day about hoping he would be good so you could get a Castillo jersey.
Yeah.
Instead of having to rely on Frank Castillo. But yeah. I mean, he was one of their bigger international signings a few years back, but he hadn't done much of anything. He was good in his pro debut in the Dominican Summer League, and then had parts of 2 seasons of rookie ball, and was not good at all. It was like a 7.5 ERA. So we didn't think much of it. And then I remember earlier this year, I guess last year at this point, we were just kind of doing our thing, watching Gulf Coast League footage via the bootleg streams. And I'm like, geez, look at the size of this. Like he'd just gotten so much bigger. And that's always the thing that jumps out to me is he's just like a full grown man now. He's listed at 6'3", 180. And that dude is 220, if not more, right? Like he is a big kid now. And the results were really good. I think he went 5 innings in each of his first 4 starts in Lakeland. Maybe 5 innings in his first 4 starts, only gave up 3 earned runs that whole time. And just throws strikes with an incredible amount of ease, considering that his fastball sits at 96 miles an hour and touches 98. And his fastball and his sinker are both that hard. So we were like, starting to get really excited about, like, there's a lot to like there. And then you'll see him flash a slider that looks at least above average, if not plus. I had forgotten about it when I was, writing up the capsule. There's a clip we have when he was out in the Arizona Fall League, and he had gotten into a bunch of trouble out there. He was playing at a much more advanced level than he was used to. And Trey Morgan was up with the bases loaded, and I think Trey Morgan hit like 350 in the minors this year. And Castillo just buried him with 3 straight sliders under his hand. It was just filthy.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that. Yeah.
And I was like, man, that slider could be a plus pitch for him. And I think the big thing we wanted to see was a little bit more development with a changeup. It's kind of firm. It was like 90 miles an hour. And it did seem like he was throwing something a little softer than that in the AFL. Now, it may have been just maybe his velocity was down in general. Maybe it was more of a split. I don't know. But if he can get that pitch going, then I think he really got something, because for as good as the fastballs are, and they get, like, particularly the sinker gets them a ton of ground balls. Like the average exit launch angle on that is -4 degrees, which is, there's no slug on the ground, right? But they don't miss bats. Even throwing 95, 96, it's like a 15% whiff rate in low A. So he's going to need another pitch that can consistently miss bats. And then if he gets that, then he'll be able to keep hitters more off balance. But it's this is a 20-year-old kid now, spent the first half of the season at 19. It's hard not to be excited about the potential there.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a ground ball rate of 58%, that's the kind of heavy sinker he has on it. But then you pause and go, well, that's great, but then there's a swinging strike rate of 10%. So that you're absolutely right, Chris. You have to, in order to get to that next level, you need another strikeout pitch. And he started working on that a little bit more. I noticed in his later starts, there was a lot more experimentation, where the first 4 or 5 starts of the season, it was sinker, heavy sinker, fastball. And the second, like, that slider was evolved. It wasn't, he was throwing every once in a while, but he started trying to throw it more often in the second part of the season, which is why you saw the numbers kind of, again, it's like a little more than the box scores we say with these guys, because they're trying to find their pitch. They're trying to find the ability to get guys out in a different way. And this is a playoff start, so this is kind of Castillo at full evolution, if you will, from last year. But yeah, you like the fact that he turns 21 in June, so he's still young. And if he starts the season at West Michigan, which I think he will, this will be a good challenge for him to continue that evolution.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like, you're just watching this video, I every time I'm just kind of sort of awestruck by how easy and consistent his delivery is for such a big kid throwing so hard. It doesn't look like a ton of effort to me.
Yeah.
And he's not, like, there's not a big head whack. He's not falling off the mound. It's under control and throwing strikes. And I think that's a great foundation for the future.
Yeah, especially when you first seen him, you realize it doesn't. You're right. You mentioned this earlier. It didn't even look like the same kid at all. It didn't. No. It was so weird to see him on the backfield, when I thought it was a reliever. I thought it was just because every reliever like that. But no, it's good to see, especially in the heels of their international success with Kyler Montero, and hopefully Castillo continues the same trend.
Yeah.
Number 13 comes in a guy who a lot of people have lost patience on for some strange reason, and I'm kind of miffed by that based off his age, because people think he's been in the system for a long time. I mean, he has to a certain extent. Number 13 at Roberto Campos. But here's the thing about Roberto Campos. He's still young for his level, and he's now this is his third season, will be his third season at West Michigan. Is that correct?
If he goes back to West Michigan, it'll be his third season there. I think I kind of, when people read about it, they'll see I wrote that there's just it feels like there's a lot of prospect fatigue here, and to a certain extent it's understandable, because people heard about him when he was 16. And so it's been 5 years, and he's still just in the low minors. So people feel like, oh, he's a bust or he hasn't done anything. He's not getting better. But there's a lot of stuff when you look under the hood. There's a lot of stuff to suggest he's making improvements. He's certainly not anything close to a finished product. But we're kind of, I think we're the only ones who still consider him a top 20 prospect in the system. I don't know, maybe Brandon and the Bless You Boys did, but yeah, I think, and then the comparison I made in our little blurb was he's younger than almost every first rounder from last year. So you can compare his stats to, like, Travis Bazzana was the guy I used. Now, completely different players, right? Bazzana,
yeah,
decorated college player coming off a long college season. But he came up in I think about 30 games in the Midwest League, put like a 765 OPS. And Campos, who's 10 months younger, in 118 games in the Midwest League, had a 757 OPS. So basically a little bit higher. And that's like, if you treat Campos like he was just a college draft pick last year and not a guy you've heard about for 5 years, then I think you can be pretty excited about him still, because it was a 120 WRC plus last year in the Midwest League, so 20% better than league average. He has continued to hit the ball hard. That's been his calling card forever. But 2 years ago, or 2023, he hit the ball on the ground too much. Well, he dropped his ground ball rate by 10% last year. It went from 47% to 37%, and all 10% of that went to line drives. Now, it might be nice if he hits a few more balls in the air, a little more fly balls, but I'm not going to complain about a guy hitting a ton of line drives, especially if he's hitting it hard. So I think, I think there's still a lot of promise there. He's also made strides on defense and on the base paths. He stole some bases last year, even though he's not a fast guy. We've got a bunch of clips of him making kind of highlight reel defensive plays now. Like, I still don't think he's a plus defender or anything like that, but he was pretty raw.
He was pretty bad. I mean, like, let's not kid ourselves. When we saw him in 2023, it's a completely different defensive profile, because in 2023, there'd be times where he overran the ball, or he'd make a really weird read on the ball. Remember that there was a play in West Michigan where Tony Paul of the Detroit News is like, oh yeah, we're sitting there going, kind of praising Campos, and within 5 minutes after saying that statement, the first ball that came to him, it just went. It was really weird rooting to it.
One of the strangest plays I can remember. It was, and that's an opposite field home run, I think, in Lansing. He's made, he was a really confusing defender at times. You're like, what is he doing? But he's made strides there. And so, I think the big question, there's still questions about it. I think, really good breaking balls, he'll still chase those and get them off balance. And the thing I want to see is, will the organization move him up to AA? Do they think he's ready for that? Or are they going to send him back to West Michigan for another season or a couple months? I think the challenge at AA would be interesting, but they may not believe in the hit tool that much. It'll be kind of telling to see what happens. But he's another one of those guys that I think, I've mentioned this before. I think we mentioned this with Jace Jung back in the day. Like, the Campos might actually put up more home runs, hit more power in AA than he did in high A because of the hitting environment. And to illustrate that fully, I mentioned, as a hitter at home, in West Michigan, he hit 248, 319, 369 with 14 extra base hits. But on the road, he hit 296, 364, 477 with 26 extra base hits. So he was basically 20% better on the road, because it's just really hard to hit in West Michigan. So I don't know. I think there's more there. We'll see what happens this year.
Yeah, I like I said, the age for his development is fine. I think he's fine. I think he's doing fine. I'm not worried about it. The WRC plus is encouraging, and the other thing too, you're mentioning another stat that stood out to me, that in addition to his ground ball rate dropping too, was the fact that he is trying to opposite field, like his opposite field percentage went down 28%, which means to me he's trying to center up the ball a little more, right? I mean, is that fair to say, or just kind of
or he's more confident in his ability to stay back on breaking balls, and so he's pulling fastballs more, or I mean, there's a lot of stuff there that could be involved. So, in pulling the ball you're gonna get hit for more power if you pull the ball more, and so it's a good sign. Like, these are incremental improvements, but they are improvements. They're worth, like, we used to compare him to Isaac Pacheco a lot because they were kind of the same age and roughly at the same level at the same time. And Pacheco actually got to West Michigan before Campos, and he's just kind of stagnated and in some ways gotten worse. And Campos has made these incremental improvements, and I just think, I don't know. Like I said, I think he's got a chance to make the big leagues as a corner outfielder still.
Yeah. And that's perfectly fine. What another person on this list what I love about this part of the list too is we talked about Rayner Castillo, and the guy that comes in at number 12 was not even a thought at all. And that is Franyerber Montilla.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, hopefully I said close enough. But Chris, this is I think it says something that we have him this high on the list because, again, not other prospect lists are going to have him this high. But he made a very quick impression, and for the athleticism and for all these international guys we just talked about, the back-to-back, Fran, I think the big thing about Fran is that he's not he sticks out. Like he makes that kind of impression because it's not like, I know we were talking about Jeff Pontus of Baseball America tipped us off a little bit, but he backed it up further by he's a dude's dude. Like he's just like all those Latin stereotypes you hear about, like grinding out bats and what have you. They all apply to him.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of first thought about him. He was putting up really big numbers in rookie ball right at the beginning of the year. He and Nomar Fanya, and we're like, are these guys legit? It's tough to know, but it was kind of crazy. Like I want to say he had 16 walks and 13 steals and like 7 doubles in the first 15 games of the season. And it was like a OPS near 1100. We're like, huh. And then the scouting report started coming in, and the first one we did get was from Jeff Ponce, who actually got it from a scout down there in the Florida Complex League, and then they dug into the data, and it was like, yeah, this guy, he's not chasing much, he's making good contact, making good swing decisions, he hits the ball hard, he's fast, he's a good defender, and then we saw it. Most of it, we caught some of it in the Complex Leagues games, and then he came up after. I want to say after July, I think he came up to Lakeland, and it was rough. It was rough at first. He looked overmatched. He looked passive. There were a lot of times where he just kind of would watch a fastball go right down the middle for strike 3, like he was looking for something else. But then, and that was, a good 15 games where he struggled. He barely got any hits at all. And then something clicked for him in September, and including the playoffs, and he was one of their most important players. And I put it in our piece in September. In 10 games in September, counting the playoffs, he went 9 for 30, so hit 300 with 5 extra base hits, 5 walks, and 3 steals. And some of those were really huge hits. We got a clip on there where I don't remember. I think it was against Palm Beach, where it was like they were down by like a run in the 8th inning, and he worked like an 8-9 pitch at bat, came back from 0-2, and then hit a leadoff triple, and eventually scored the tying run, and they won by 1 run. And it was like he just has that knack. And like that's sort of what you were saying. And then you watch him play defense, and he's got the requisite athleticism. He's got the flair. He's got, he'll do the shovel with the glove. He'll make a snag above his head. He's got everything you want on defense. And then he's just a really aggressive base runner with infectious enthusiasm. There's a ton to like there.
0-2 ground ball.
So there's the little glove flip right there. Just, like he does it every day. That's the sort of play you see from big leaguers, and they help turn a double play, and so yeah, I mean the tools are all there, the baseball skills are there. What we need to see from him is just more games against better competition and see how it holds up. I think as a switch hitter, I think he's better from the right side right now, but probably has more power from the left side, and that may just be an artifact of him, having more swings from the left side, but. So there's going to need some work there, but you're talking about a potential, impact shortstop down the road if he keeps progressing.
Yeah, one of the things you can look at easily is his numbers down the stretch at Lakeland. They're not pretty, but the playoffs he turned on, like you mentioned earlier, he turned something on in the playoffs, and that's what I'm saying. Like, this is a great play right here, just fantastic, just good baseball instincts right there, but. It was in the playoffs where he stepped up, and that's hard to do considering the way he would jump up from Complex League. And I don't. But this is what excites me a little bit. If he can continue to hit, the one thing that I worry about is, and I'm not trying to say this name, and like it's not like a Christian Santana situation too, where Santana had a lot of power, and there was a lot of things that we liked about Santana, but just he hasn't been able to.
Yeah,
the next step.
No, I mean, I think, and that's not a unfair thing to say. I mean, we were really excited about Santana. I thought he could hit really well, and then it just didn't work. I think when Montilla, you've got a much more athletic player than Santana was. Santana ended up being, basically a second baseman trying to play shortstop and third base. I think it's probably closer to Winsel Perez in terms of the overall package. But hopefully he can stay on the left side of the infield. Now, it'll be interesting to see what they do next year because they're going to have Bryce Rainer probably at the same level. And I don't know if they're going to move Rainer around much. They may play him at third just because to get Montilla reps, but we might end up seeing Montilla playing mostly second or third with Rainer playing shortstop. But either way, I think he's going to be good enough on defense to play second, third, or shortstop. So I don't know, just like I said, an exciting player with a high upside.
Yeah, and that to me, it's all you can ask for is an international guy like that, and more of that too, especially with some of the guys in our top 10. So it is just wild though. It's to me still really wild that he is this high on our list, considering where he was last year. So that's what I love about this list is some of the names on here are brand new, and they have really just like Casey Kasem, just like and fast approaching the number one. But number 11 that comes in, and our last of our 5-pack, if you will, is Trey Sweeney, who the Tigers now picked up for essentially free because of the John Flaherty signing. And he is a guy who, I mean, is props to Cameron on his tweet. He tweeted out the Mercy Metrics account, a 1-year, $14 million contract in 2024 could have net the Tigers an all-star version of Jack Flaherty. Those are Thayron, Trey Sweeney, Jack Flaherty again on a larger contract, and the 2026 draft pick if Flaherty exercises opt-out and the Tigers offer a qualifying offer. Not bad.
There's nothing wrong with there. I don't know if you can give somebody a qualifying offer if they exercise an opt-out. I don't know how that works, but it's possible. In any event, it's been a spectacular, turn of events here for the Tigers, trading Jack Flaherty, getting two players who end up being way better than anybody thought in making the playoffs. And Sweeney is, if Montilla is the ceiling, Sweeney's kind of the floor, right? And it's mostly because we saw him do it a little bit. Now, we didn't see him do it a ton, but he came up to the big leagues and put up metrics that showed him to be an above-average defender, particularly, ranging to his right. And of course, this play was kind of iconic during the season. And we've talked many times about how what we loved about that was he commented and said he missed a play like that a couple games before and said it wasn't going to happen again. And so it didn't. And he made this spectacular catch, and the Tigers made a miracle victory at Baltimore. But yeah, that's what you see, that the really good instincts at shortstop. His arm isn't terribly strong, but he just has good timing. And so it looks like an above average defender there. And he's also an above average runner who could probably steal you 15, 20 bases this season. And he hits the ball really hard. Now, I would almost argue that he hits it too hard, or he swings too hard. His bat speed is about the same as Riley Green's. But he doesn't have Riley Green's, bat to ball skills. And there's a lot of swing and miss there. He whiffed a lot last year. He chases a fair amount. So there are real questions about how well he can hit. That said, he ran into 4 home runs last year. He hit 218, which I think is, it's not like, oh, he was super lucky, right? He hit 218. And the bar for offense performance at shortstop, if you're a good defender, is really, really low. And it's kind of fun. We're watching him hit against the Cubs here right now. Here's a good example. Dansby Swanson had a 99 WRC plus last year. So, basically a league average hitter. But he played plus shortstop and was worth 4.3 WAR. So if you're an average hitter and a good defender, you can be very valuable. And I don't think Sweeney is as good as a defender as Swanson. But if he's an above average defender at shortstop, he can hit 220, 210. He could even hit 200. And if he's providing a little bit of power and speed with that defense, he's still going to be a positive value player. which is a huge, like that. Again, that's the floor. And if they can make some tweaks to his swing and have him hit 230, 240, then you're talking about it like a 3+ WAR player, which is, that's your starter at shortstop. So it's not necessarily like a super sexy prospect for your number 11 in your system, but it's pretty nice to have a legit big league shortstop that if he hits a little bit more, he's better than that.
And look, if you look at past performances or shortstops, if you will, growing up in the 80s, there was always a guy who hit like, you wonder why he was out there on a daily basis. I mean, if you look at somebody like Tommy Brookins, for example, Tommy Brookins, batting average wise, I mean, here's the thing about Tom Brookins, as far as why, like, as much as Sparky Anderson tried to get rid of Tom Brookins, he always found a way to play third. I mean, his best year was 1984, where he had a 2-WAR season. The best batting average wise he ever did, he batted with 275 in 1980. He batted 275 with 10 home runs. He also had a really good year where he batted 270 in 1986, and then he had 13 home runs in 1987, where he started seeing more time at third because between him and Darrell Evans, and they traded Darnell Coles earlier that year. Anyway, my point is, if you can play defense, you're on a baseball team, and there's something valuable to be said about that. And so, I think Tiger fans at this point are just happy with some sort of production. And if you're going to complain about it, do you want Javi Baez back there? Then you immediately you're going to shut your mouth, because you can't have it both ways. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. Like, I think Trey Sweeney was a solid pickup, and the biggest the game, like, the gamer thing, like everybody talks about, is that being like, oh, he's a gamer, and he is. And the Tigers have a good problem to have. They have some infield depth, which is something this team has not had in quite a long time.
Yeah, it's like I said, we went from them like, well, what the hell are they going to do at shortstop forever? Like, and that maybe that'll be a question again in a couple months. But they found at least a stopgap solution there for their Javi Baez problem, and Javi Baez is still on the team, so who knows what's going to happen there? But they found somebody that they can plug in there and be reasonably sure that he's going to catch the ball, and he's got some upside. So, yeah, I think that's enough to put him there in the top 15, just because, like you said, big league shortstops are hard to come by, and when they can play it at an above average level, you got something.
Yeah, and that's all you can ask for. And speaking of getting something here, meat and potatoes of the next part of our 5-pack will be 10 through 6, and that will be a treat, because this is where we had some decisions to make here as a collective between the three of us as our top 10s. I think that's one thing that we're going to probably be releasing here probably next week or so, is what our respective top 30 looks like, or when we did our list, because it's a combination of all three of us, and then just counting out the average. So if you'll be interested to see I think my top 10 is completely different than Chris's, and same thing with Jerry.
Yeah, I mean, they're relatively close, but yeah, there are definitely we have differences for sure. Basically everywhere but number 1.
Yeah, we were universal on number 1. No, that was a no. I think in historically speaking, we've been on the same page about who's number 1 usually.
Yeah, I think going back to Riley Green.
Yeah,
and then maybe Scooble before that. Colt Keith.
Yeah, Colt Keith. Yeah.
Yeah. Colt Keith was our number 1 last year, and now it's no real surprise who it is this year. But yeah, I didn't know if we were gonna. I mean, this one was longer just to do 5 guys. We've been doing 10 packs, but I guess for the final 15 we can do 5 apiece, or
you want to just power through and just do you want to go through we can go to number 5. That's cool.
Yeah, we'll go through. Yeah, we'll do 10 to 6, and then our final top 5 will be a video all of its own.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, because the top 5 we can go. We won't go number 10. We won't go ham on it. And Jaden Hamm starts off our. That was a bad joke. Jaden Hamm starts at number 10, and he was our minor league pitcher of the year last year. We had him on the podcast. He knows how big a fan we are of him, because he was a guy who really got off to a strong start in Lakeland. And like I said, it just his mechanics, everything stood out. And he is a guy who takes advantage, the Tigers haven't tweaked him that much at all, if anything. And that's unusual because now we're hearing how much the Tigers are with certain pitchers. And there's a couple times where last year we were asked, like, is he going to go to Erie at some point? And it was one of those things where I don't think the Tigers are in no rush with him whatsoever. And that's okay because there was no real need for it. I mean, there was a lot of veterans that were there. You saw in Pena last year and Erie, and Jaden Hamm just worked the top of the zone, did a really good job. I think he had a little bit of fatigue towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
Because I think that was a career amount of innings for him, I believe.
Yeah, I believe so too. I'm looking, let's see, in Middle Tennessee, the most innings he threw was 79.2. And he was up at 99 last year. I think the only place you really saw it, he didn't get any more hittable for the most part, wasn't giving up more home runs or anything like that. He walked a few more guys down the stretch, and his velocity was down a little bit. And that's the only thing that's keeping him from being a little bit higher on our list. In the middle of the year, he was even making some sort of midseason top 100 prospect lists, and he did make Keith Law's top 100 prospect list still. I mean, there's real mid-rotation upside here. It's kind of a funky look. We've talked about it a lot. It's a high slot. But as you said, the Tigers didn't really change anything about him other than where he threw his pitches, how his pitch mix. Throw that fastball up, throw that breaking ball down. It's kind of old school Astros mentality. And he's been working on the changeup and the slider, and he'll need those to get, a little bit more horizontal movement. But the fastball has a ton of life to it. And if he gets stronger and throws harder or can hold his velocity deeper into the season, then you're talking about him getting back into a top 100 prospect consideration. So not bad for a guy we have ranked 10th, that's for sure.
Yeah, and he is a guy who right now looks to be like a third, probably a fourth starter, maybe a fifth starter.
Yeah, I think fourth starter is probably a good upside there. And there is the fallback option. We don't like to talk about it with him just yet because he's still pretty young and hasn't even been to Double-A. But if it doesn't work out as a starter, he could be a very interesting reliever with that arm slot and theoretically throwing harder. That'll be a very interesting look for opposing hitters for an inning or two. So there's still some pretty high floor there too.
Yeah, and this against Quad Cities, and Quad Cities is a pretty good team last year too. And it's didn't matter who it was. I just thought that the level of consistency last year was really good, and so I could see him starting the year in Erie. I don't know, Chris. Maybe if he,
I think they'll send him to Erie. They want guys to dominate their level, and he definitely did. And I don't know if what he needs to work on, he can really do in West Michigan. Scott Harris said that they like to get guys working on what they need to do for the next level before they actually send them to the next level. But I mean, the previous regime would have promoted him in June or July. So I think giving him the entire season at West Michigan probably gave them plenty of time to work on what he needs to work on or understand what he needs to work on. And I think he'll be in Erie, but we'll see.
Yeah. And there's nothing, again, I like the fact that he doesn't really need to rush because it's really not necessary. And I think that it does allow him to have that kind of flexibility to, they're going to continue to work. There's probably going to be, again, whatever pitches they're going to have him work on, those continue to do so. So coming in at number 9 is Troy Melton. And Melton last year, after getting called up from West Michigan, was, I mean, the home runs aside, I know that people like his numbers where he was just, it was just learning how to pitch in Double-A. It was an adjustment to the level. And I think he's going to be fine. And he is a guy who watches this, like he works on his stuff constantly. And I think last year was one of those things where if you look at the splits, it was a guy trying to figure out his pitch mix better at a higher level. And not just, you get in West when you're getting high A, or it might be a certain like fastball heavy or what have you. And you can't, that same stuff you can bring on the inside won't work in Double-A. But towards the end of the season, a little fatigue set in. He got hit hard his last couple starts at the end of August. But still, there's a lot to work with here. I mean, this is a guy who's got some tremendous upside, 109 strikeouts in, I believe, trying to think of. Oh, I'm sorry. It was 119 strikeouts and 100 innings pitched. Still have a good solid K per 9 of 10.6.
Yeah, I mean, it was and only 30 walks. Yeah. So it was in his both his strikeout rate went up when he climbed from high A to double A, and his walk rate was about the same. Like, he didn't walk any more batters. He's another guy that may need a little bit of that time Madden treatment. Lefties hit him for more power,
324,
and higher average, and walked more. So that might also just be a matter of him getting more comfortable throwing the fastball inside, right? And I like he's one where the performance dipped, but like the scouting wise, it still looked great. Still throwing mid to upper 90s with great shape on his fastball. I don't know if he has a true plus secondary pitch right now, but they all kind of flash above average. He'll show you an above average changeup, an above average cutter, above average slider. So yeah, I mean, and he's a big, strong kid who looks like he can, eat tons of innings. So it's kind of similar to Hamm in that, like, he's probably a number 4 starter, maybe a little bit more if he finds another plus secondary pitch. But for him, it's about throwing more quality strikes. And obviously, he doesn't have any trouble throwing strikes because of the strikeout rate and the lower walk rate. So just refining that command a little bit. That's the next big step. And we've seen guys do that over the last couple of years. That's what Reese Olson did, basically. And Kaider Montero has done that, where they just needed to refine their command a little bit to keep the ball out of the heart of the zone more. And I don't see any reason why he can't do that. So we're still pretty high on him. I know he's falling down some other lists just because of the production, but we still like the arm and the potential.
Yeah. And that's where, again, it's one of those things that you really have to kind of sit back and go, it's going to be okay. Like, it's not the end of the world. Like some of
I think he'll be just fine.
Yeah. You know what? He will. Yeah. I mean, that's.
I think he's going to be just fine.
Yeah. He'll be fine. I'm not the upside with him and just kind of build like a starter is cool. So there's I'm not cool, but I mean, like, there's a lot of upside to him. And again, if you look at Madden too, Madden first year in Double A, it took him a while before he mastered it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I mean, a couple. Those are basically not to spoil things. Those are our last 2 pitchers on the list, and so that's if you want to complain about one thing.
It's minus the guy at number 1.
Yeah, but I'm saying if you want to complain about one thing in the system, and this is kind of funny to think of, given the way the systems have been for the last 20 years, is that there's not a second kind of high upside. There are a bunch of high upside arms. I shouldn't say that, but more of like a high level guy in the upper minors who looks like a potential number 3, number 2 starter. There are a bunch of guys in the lower minors who look like they could get there, but it's just that's the one thing that's kind of holding the system back slightly. I mean, I think we're still talking about top 5 system in baseball, so picking nits. But in number 8 is a guy who everybody saw last year in the big leagues. We don't think we saw the best version of him on either side of the ball for reasons that maybe not his fault, but it's Jace Jung, second baseman by trade, kind of forced into playing third base last year because the Tigers signed Colt Keith to a long-term extension, and then they moved Colt Keith to first base after 1 year. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? But yeah, Jace Jung, he was doing just fine in the first half of the year, and then he hurt his wrist and came back in Toledo, and basically his power just went away. I think it was a 225 ISO before the injury, and it was like 100 afterward in the minors and the majors. So it was clear that the risk was bothering him in some capacity. But he still managed to put up a close to average WRC plus in the big leagues, despite hitting for 0 power, because he walked a ton. He has a really good eye at the plate, right? Like, he doesn't chase at all. He does have some swing and miss inside the zone, which is an issue when you're not hitting for power. Pitchers aren't afraid to just come right at you, really. So what we'll need to see from him this year is more game power, and you kind of hope that the lack of big league game power was something to do with the wrist and not something to do with his swing, but we don't know for sure. And then the other issue, of course, is the defense. And maybe the wrist was hampering his defense a little bit, but there's only so much you can do. I just think I feel for the kid because I think he's been asked to do something that he's not suited for. I don't think he has the agility or the sort of quick twitch movements to be a good third baseman. He just doesn't have it. I think he was fine at second base. He had when you have a little bit more time to react to the ground balls, you're not getting so many scorched liners at you, and the throwing distance isn't as far. And I don't know. I've always thought he had a decent glove when he had a chance to get set. But that's the thing at third base is it's just a reaction position, and I don't think he has the reactions.
Yeah, and there's times where it was like the side to side stuff. Like there's sometimes where it was just to get a ball, eat him up pretty quickly there. And you know what? You bring up a good point. It wasn't fair for him. Like he played a great second base, and he really got pissed that people didn't think he was a good defensive second baseman at West Michigan. And he won, I believe, the Midwest Defensive Player of the Year at that position there. And I think he's a guy who, if whatever happens here in the next, I mean, if you think about it this way, if they sign Bregman, if they sign Bregman,
mm-hmm.
you have Colt Keefe at first, and Gleyber Torres is only signed for a year. In theory, what you could do is slide Jung right over to second.
Yeah.
You know, if Torres doesn't come back. As simple as that.
And it's great to have a player of that caliber in Toledo if you need him. And you know what they would do down there was probably continue playing him at third and second, which wouldn't be a bad thing. So, yeah, it's he's a nice player to have in the system. It's just there's some questions that still need to be answered that might not be able to be answered at any other level but the big leagues, and circumstances beyond his control will dictate whether he can actually answer those. But yeah, I mean, you'll see that he's fallen off just about every top 100 prospect list, and I think that's because he's playing third base. I think had he been playing second base, he probably would have graded out fine to slightly below average there, and people would still consider him somewhere in that 70 to 100 range. But -6 defensive runs saved in about 200 innings is going to look rough on your scouting report.
And there's been talk in The Athletic about him not starting at being a part-time player. He's going to be per The Athletic that they're talking about him. It don't sign a third baseman where Jung play at, and so there is some video, by the way, that came out that somebody ripped off Instagram and put it on their own because the Tigers turmoil. I'll give him a lot of props. He takes a lot of stuff from Instagram, puts it up here, and that's what he does. He puts it on Twitter. This is him at Texas Tech. And he looks like he's lost a little bit of weight too. So,
and the bat looks fast. So, I mean, it's just BP footage, but you hope the power comes back and the hitting ability comes back, and then you've got something because it's always going to be a bat first profile. But if he gets to it's kind of like an Isaac Paredes, Kyle Schwarber sort of profile where he might be able to get to 25, 30 home runs with a good amount of walks and a relatively low average. And that's still a valuable player. It's just you've got to see him actually hit for power at the big league level before we can predict that.
Yep. And so this coming up at number 7 is a guy who has not seen any major league time at all, and he's the highest, I believe, on our list that would fit that qualification. Correct, in terms of who's never even gotten professional, who hasn't made his professional debut, I should say.
I think he's the only player on our list who hasn't made his professional debut. Oh, well, no, Michael Massey didn't either, right?
And then Josh Randall as well.
Randall actually pitched.
Oh, no, that's right. That's
last
right.
year.
Who was that? Or was there another hitter though that didn't?
I'm trying to think. It would all be
Dixon. Never mind. Dixon pitched summer ball or played summer ball. So sorry. Go ahead.
So, but yeah, I mean, this is in that we don't love to do this, but this is a guy that we've seen in playing on the showcase circuit. Going back and watching these games, watching him play in high level high school baseball. He's in we talked about it with Ethan Scheffelbein in the previous video, playing there in Southern California. It's pretty much considered the best high school baseball conference in the country. Scheffelbein's Corona team has 3 guys who might go in the first round this year. And Rayner was on Harvard Westlake, the alma mater of Brendan Bosch and Jack Flaherty, among others. And so it's a great program there. And yeah, he's a guy that for years and years, people thought he was, there's Scheffelbein right there pitching to him. For years and years, people thought he was going to be a pitcher because He's 6'3" and he throws 96 with a hammer breaking ball. He was like a legit first round talent, but he always wanted to hit. And he didn't have a great showcase circuit heading into his senior season of high school, but he made some changes as a senior and really impressed a lot of scouts. Hit the ball much harder. He consistently hit for power. He'll drive the ball the opposite way. And then he had the National High School Invitational. That was the stat that everybody cites. Is I think he had 4 or 5 of the hardest hit balls at the entire tournament, which is the best high school teams from around the country. So he really took a step forward, and he was generally considered the best or the second best high school bat in the draft, and kind of a top 10 prospect. And he slipped slightly to the Tigers because a couple of people took players ranked lower, and you see him. He's consistently ranked in the top 70 on top prospect lists without ever playing a game. So there's a lot of belief there that he's a guy that, that he got more athletic. People think he can stick at shortstop. If he doesn't, he's got a cannon of an arm, so he'll be fine at third base. So it's you're kind of looking at maybe like, a starter kit for Trey Sweeney. You hope that maybe he can hit a little bit better than that. That's my one kind of question mark heading forward is how is he going to hit for average, but we'll see. And I'm excited to watch him play pro ball.
Yeah, same here. The Tigers will probably start him in complex before we see some time, and hopefully in Lakeland relatively soon. But yeah, he is a fun player to watch, and he's already, like I said, he's kind of like looks like a man among boys, especially that first pitcher he faced against. Like the kid looked like he was barely a junior.
Yeah, I mean he's the true 6'3", and then I remember saying this before when going down to see him when he signed with the Tigers, or came to Comerica to kind of chop it up with people. He was his dad is like 6'5", 6'6", and his younger brother is already as tall as him. It's like, man, this is an athletic looking family. So you just hope he can hit and get out there and have a good rookie year. I mean, you're talking if he hits, if he hits and hits for power, you're down the road, you're looking at a top 10 prospect in baseball, right? Like this is kind of Marcelo Meyer-ish. So really, good ceiling there. We'll just have to see him perform a little bit.
Good genes. There you go.
That's right.
That's good genes. So number last or 6 before we get to our top 5 is Thayron Liranzo, and he is a guy who was, again, not even an organization last year, came over, and even he made some changes as he came over from Great Lakes. So we saw him at Great Lakes, and when he came over, and originally the batting average, just like if you look at his batting average, like this is the guy that got for Jack Flaherty. Boo! I remember fans being really upset. Yeah. It's like, give the guy time, give him a damn second. And as a result, came out, and now he's among one of the top prospects in all of baseball. He hit for a higher average, and he hit. I remember that game we saw at Lansing where he was like 4 for 5, just bomb after bomb after bomb to center field. That was a game too, though. I remember talking to Jesse, the announcer, Strasburg, from Lansing, saying that when they saw him earlier in the year, that they just didn't think anything of him. He said there was a completely different hitter.
Yeah, I mean it's fun to look back at this and how it worked out, right? Because and it's just, we always talk about it that prospects, rankings are kind of just that snapshot in time, and the Tigers got him basically right when his was at as low as it got, and then it's just been straight up since then. And the year before, 2023, he hit 24 home runs in low A as a 19-year-old with a 17% walk rate.
Made the futures game.
Yeah, and so like the upside was there, but then this year, it was when the Tigers traded for him, he was hitting 220 with 7 home runs. Walk rate was still 16%, strikeout rate was 26%, but he wasn't hitting for average and wasn't hitting for much power. And he made some small adjustments and just blew up with the Whitecaps. It was what it was at 315 over 26 games, 5 homers, 23% walk rate, 17% strikeout rate, and all the underlying data supports basically all of that. He is, I mentioned with Jace Jung, Liranzo does not chase. He's not going to chase a ball out of the zone. He will take tons and tons of walks. You can beat him in the zone, but if you make a mistake in the zone, he's going to demolish it. He's got plus raw power. He crushes the ball. We've seen some majestic, incredible home runs. The sound of the crack off the bat in the All-Star game in the Fall Stars. It's just it's a beautiful thing. And then beyond that, everybody knew, okay, like he's got the power potential, he's got the patience, but can he catch? And that's still an open question. But he started answering a lot of those questions in the fall league. The people were worried about it, but he showed that he's got what it takes to stay behind there. He's going to need continued work, but it's a plus arm, so he's going to help control the running game, and he just needs to work a little bit on the agility and framing or whatever. But getting out there in the Fall Stars or fall league and catching a dozen different pitchers is great. It's a great experience for him. So. Yeah, this is a guy who is now a consensus top 75 prospect in all of baseball. Some people think he could climb up into the top 30 if he continues hitting, because switch hitting catchers with this power and patience do not come along. So yeah, just a great, ends up looking like a great trade, and a guy well worthy of top 100 prospect status, and he is a consensus prospect like that. So really exciting.
Especially when you look at the work he's done with Brian Pena has paid off. And Pena, who was the catching instructor for the organization, the side-to-side movement, which was something that I noticed at Great Lakes, he kind of was a little lethargic behind the plate, got better. The arm is there. The arm's been plus. I mean, we saw a couple of throws down in Arizona Fall League, as you mentioned, that he was able to hold his own. And that's a big development, because the Tigers, catching-wise, heading into the All-Star, or excuse me, heading into the trade deadline, the whole thing is that people were going to say, well, what about Jose Basenio? But he wasn't going to come back and play catching. He wasn't going to be a catcher anymore, because based off that knee injury. And so there's some legitimate, like, oh shit, who's going to play catcher? Mm-hmm. And he's been able to answer that and then some. And it's kind of like you've heard that, like, well, he was like the consolation prize the Tigers got, because Harris got that, he was forced this situation.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes things work out for you, even if you don't. Like, yeah, we heard that the Tigers originally had a deal for the Yankees where they were going to get, I think, Will Warren as the main piece, a pitcher who's a fine prospect, but he's not ranked as high as Liranzo is now. So it's just like, yeah, sometimes things just work out, and that's why you have scouts, right? Like it didn't work out this one deal. Well, are there other players we like? Yeah, we like this guy. Go get him. And yeah, it's a pretty high ceiling. It's a pretty high floor. Even if he doesn't hit, right? He doesn't hit for average. It is just, below average catcher. If you walk and you hit for power and you can play a little bit of catcher, you're still going to provide value. So, really nice piece to have, and could be a perfect, down the road, say Dingler is kind of your defensive stalwart, and you have Liranzo is more of the everyday catcher who's not great on defense, but is a plus offensive player. That's a pretty nice tandem to have.
Yeah, you can't beat that. And the fact that here we are starting the season, he's going to probably start the season at Erie, and that's where I want to put this disclaimer out there, Chris. It's going to take some time.
Yeah.
It always, when you get to a new level like that for catchers, we've noticed this with Dingler. It's just a thing across the board. It takes a really unique player as a catcher to make it through. And he's relatively young, so I want Tiger fans to practice patience with that. So if he's hitting 201 at the end of May, don't freak out. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah, it's also it's worth remembering. That's a good point. That this is still his age 21 season coming up. He turns 22 in July on July 5th. If you whatever your age is on July 1st is your age season. So age 21 season in AA, switch hitting catcher, power and patience. What's not to like?
Yeah. I just wanted. We have. I feel like we have to put that disclaimer out there, because catchers develop differently than any other position out there. It's just a matter of fact. And so, by the way, speaking of catchers, the Tigers did pick up a catcher today in the Alex Faedo deal. Should be worth mentioning that, because we don't know a lot about him. I know that he was pretty advanced or pretty young for his level. But the catcher who they picked up,
Anderson Delgado.
Henderson Delgado.
Another switch hitting catcher
from Venezuela.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there are some scouting reports on him out there, mostly dedicated to his defense. They say he's a really good defender with a plus arm. But at the same time, as a 19-year-old in low A switch hitter, put up a 134 WRC plus. Hit 255 with 12% walk rate, 4 home runs. So he may be a guy who doesn't necessarily ever give you much offense, but there's still some tools there. It feels a little bit like maybe Eliezer Alfonso, but a better defender. I think that would work.
Yeah.
I mean, my initial thinking is that I would probably slot him on our system or on our list somewhere between 25 and 35, but I haven't really thought about it or watched him enough to really say that for sure.
Yeah, I'll have to watch some more video of him, but I understand why we could put him on our top 46 based off his age, what was able to do. But yeah, it was a good pickup by the Tigers. Just gives them another catcher at that level where they have some veterans at Toledo and Erie, but they didn't really, outside of backup wise, they lost Josh Crouch in the Rule 5 draft, so they needed another guy at least in the A level, like right around there, and so probably start the season at Lakeland, I'm assuming.
Well, let's see. He spent, he played 56 games at Low A last year. He may go to Lakeland. It depends on what they want. I'm trying to think. They still have Bennett Lee. It'll probably be at West Michigan, Valencia, and they have Enrique Jimenez, who may be catching in Low A. So I don't know. Yeah, it'll be interesting if he's really as advanced as they say he is on defense. He could probably survive going up to high A, and if they just want him to catch the ball and play defense, that's fine. And maybe it'll be a challenge for him offensively, but yeah, it's another name to know in the system. That's fun. They just keep adding these guys. Yeah,
and the depth will continue to pile up there for the Tigers. So next up on our series will be the 5 through 1, the final 5 of our list. And you can find the 40, if you haven't already, go to TigersMLReport.com and click on the tab. But there's going to be, for you Patreon folks, the 11 through 6. I'm up next on that. They'll be out tomorrow, or excuse me, if you're listening to, well, they'll be out by the time you listen to it. So, or watch us, if you will. Tuesday. And from there, we'll be wrapping things up. But then we're going to start working on the prospect reports, but these Patreon only stuff will be eventually behind the paywall. But at some point, we're just going to wait a while. Like I said, there's a reason why you go on Patreon. You want to get it before everybody else. You want to be a scholarly Tiger fan, by all means, go for it. And also we have our GoFundMe link that you can find in the description as spring training. I actually think about, Chris, I was thinking about this. I might just do spring training towards the future, like that game instead. It might be just worthwhile to do that versus
I know. I mean, it crept up on us here, and we didn't really know, funding, all that stuff. So funding, you want to get down for big league stuff. You want to get down there toward the beginning, but for prospect stuff, it probably makes more sense to get down there toward mid-March to catch that, the spring breakout game and maybe some backfield action to see some of the younger guys. So, and that'll give you a little bit more time to make money or get money or get donations to get you down to Lakeland.
There we go. Exactly. So that's that might be the plan. Cause like right now it's not look good to go until then versus early on. It's just the donations, as much as we appreciate the donations are awesome. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. And it's perfectly fine. I really appreciate all the feedback we've been getting on these as well, and all the content that we've been able to provide. So thank you again for the comments. The yesterday, the Flaherty show went really well too, the live reaction show. And if you get a chance to, we do this sometimes that we should do. We try to do as much as can. Check out the Tarek Skubal interview with Cody and Kieran. They did a really good job with that. And the Jackson Jobe stuff too, as well, from Evan and Mark Days of Roar podcast did a really good job with that as well. Yeah. So just want to plug those guys. And if you have not seen our Scott Harris interview, it's out on our YouTube page. I had a random friend of mine who I haven't talked to in a long time just randomly reach out to me and was like, "Hey man, congratulations on Scott interviewing Scott Harris." And it took me a second to realize, like, who is this?
Who are you?
Yeah, who I don't even know who you are. Yeah. No, but it was a buddy of mine, Rob. So shout out to Rob for reaching out. It caught me off guard because I haven't talked to him in quite a long time. So, nice. But check out baseball.
Brings people together.
Always. That's what baseball does. It does that to a great point. But check out all great content, TigersMLReport.com. 5 things you need to know from Joe Rampy. There'll be another one coming out on Friday. Great stuff by Joe. And Jerry, the Wizards, already kind of cooking up some stuff in the lab already. Not that kind of lab. But yeah, check everything out until something happens on the Bregman side of things or whatever the Tigers are going to do. We'll talk to you later.